we're gonna honor that. Really excited to teach Ignite. When I first got into the business, when we were incubating at KW's Morristown office, I was in all these Ignite classes, and I really got a lot out of it. And I'm sure you guys, this is session 10. I'm sure you guys will have a very, or if you've been committed from the beginning, I'm sure you've seen a lot of that progress already. So I'm going to go through. Christina, do you have notes yet? Do you want to pull stuff up? I know you're on. Not.
Do you want me to pull up the guide or like the manual?
I have the guide with me. I don't know if you're pulling. I don't know if I should be doing that with you. So
I can share my screen.
Okay. While Christina's doing that, so today's expectations. We're talking about negotiate the deal. I think they call it win the deal now. That's annoying. I'm gonna get out of that for a second. So today's expectations, we're going to learn negotiating tips. We're going to understand the most common points of negotiation. We're going to walk through the 3 P's approach to the negotiation process and identify negotiation tactics and counter tactics. We had mission assignments for this past week, right? There you go. Perfect. So we had mission assignments for this past week. Complete your 10-4. I guess since we're not in person, I don't have you guys show me those, but did you do your homework? So daily 10-4, write your notes on the homes you previewed, bring the class to share, be prepared to share your daily 10-4 results in class. So let's kind of go through that a little bit. Obviously you guys previewed homes, you had your 10-4. So anybody have anything that they wanted to share from that? Contacts added, connections, notes, homes previewed, any of your activities bring any ahas for you this past week?
I'll share one. An aha for me is I was working with a buyer who was looking to get a property that had tenants in it, and lesson learned from now on, before we go in even to putting like an offer, I'm going to ask the agent if they know if the tenants are on time with their rent, have been paying it, because found out in the attorney review process that they're like 4 months behind the current tenants on their rent, and my buyers are like, we want nothing to do with it. So we obviously walked away from our deal. So that was like an aha for me. That lesson learned, I'm going to ask immediately if they're on time with their rent, or if not, what's being done about it, and then have that conversation with the people I'm working with.
Yeah, that's a great aha. And honestly, one of the interesting things about properties with tenants, as you've experienced with a property with non-paying tenants, especially in COVID, where there's an eviction moratorium, which will get lifted, but we don't know when. On one hand, that's a huge disadvantage or a huge negative for your buyers. But knowing that up front, and knowing that's a huge negative for the sellers themselves, might actually, if your buyer has the liquid and has the ability, there's actually some negotiating opportunity to maybe come in and swing for the fences. But it depends on the buyer, of course.
And the seller too. We tried, and he was like, well, no, we have an offer that came in after yours and we're holding it as a backup, and it's more. So if you don't want to move forward with the way it is, like, we'll just, and I said, okay, fine, I'll talk to them, and that's fine. And they didn't want to. So yeah.
Nice. Anybody else have
lesson
learned from their weekly activities?
Similar to Caitlin, but not exactly, is when we're having a conversation with a potential seller and they mention, oh, I've done this improvement, that improvement, and I've remodeled that, is to ask them if they took out all the necessary permits for those improvements. Because we went to see this home and this guy's been working the last 4 years doing all kinds of projects in the home, didn't take out one permit for one of them. And he did some pretty serious stuff. So, you know, it's going to be an issue for that, the certificate of occupancy.
It definitely will. It definitely will. Christina, you could probably sorry, I'm being a pain. You could probably unshare for a second while we're going through these. Thanks. Cool. Yeah, those are all good all good things to know. If you come across if you're meeting with a seller who has unpermitted stuff, that having that expectation conversation, that's actually one of the things we're going to talk about today too, as we're negotiating, because we're not just negotiating with the other agent, and a lot of times we're negotiating with our own clients, and understanding how to do that effectively is really critical. So cool. Anybody else, anything else that stood out from your 10-4? Cool. Other mission prior to this class, practice scripts with a partner. I trust you all did your homework. Preparing for negotiations, there was that that video watching a KW master on negotiating. Getting acquainted with common negotiation issues with scripted responses, which you guys could find on KW Connect if you didn't download already. There's a script book, specifically negotiation scripts. Knowing the scripts is really important. You always got to know the rules before you can break them. A lot of people just want to make them natural right off the bat. But one of the things I've found with script practicing, actually, if you guys could, or you could either virtually raise a hand or drop something in the comments. When you guys started calling and started using scripts, how many of you, like me, said that, these scripts are lame, I'm just going to do my own? Anybody fall into that category, right? Okay, so let me tell you something about the way scripts work. The reason they're created, they weren't like just created by your 8th grade English teacher. The reason scripts were created is because they've had a tried and true method that elicits responses. Humans are relatively predictable people and predictable things. We're very predictable. So when we say certain things, when we script, it naturally leads people into a response. I always like to look at this as when I was studying music back in my college days, I wanted to just break the rule. Like I didn't want to follow the rules that music theory set out. And a teacher told me, you got to know the rules before you can break them, because then when you do, you have concrete reasons why that you're deviating from form, you're deviating from the norm. So I really, really believe that's essential with your scripting too. Make sure you know the scripts, but you have to know the scripts in order to modify them effectively. And those agents who do, who go in that order, have a much quicker time reaching the point where the person on the other end is responding the way they want them to, because we're not just shooting from the hip and trying new methods. We're looking at, okay, this is the method that we said works, and now we're adjusting it and we're modifying it slightly. I'm modifying it for my tone. I'm modifying it for you know, the tone of the person on the other side. I'm modifying it for the scenario, but we're working based on a series of scripts that we know made sense first. So I know the thing that we all want to do is start from scratch and make it sound like us. I would definitely challenge you guys, don't start from zero, start from the shell, work from that script, and then kind of make it work for you from there. So that's my script soapbox, coming from a guy who hates scripting and cold calls, but it works, I promise. Cool. Went through script, follow up previous power session, grow your database. I guess you guys have your contact lists and tablet. You guys, so part of Ignite, you guys have been growing your databases regularly, right? This is a key. Anybody finding frustration there? Anybody finding successes there? Ahas from growing your database?
One of one of the things that I noticed is that when you do make that contact and they do pick up the phone and you go through a conversation and you put them maybe in like a neighborhood thing. When I had sat down with Ron Iosa on Friday, he told me that one of the things that he does naturally almost every day is on the way home from work, he goes to the post office because he sends out at least 3 handwritten notes. And he said that I have a gentleman that lives down the street from me. I was cold calling for my open house, and he said that he's looking to sell, but his daughter's pregnant and she's going to be due in April. So she's going to be out of the house. So nobody new is allowed in the house, and rightfully so. He said, write the handwritten note, put your card in it, sign your name, and just say, like, I hope, I hope she's doing well, whatever. And then when you do make that call, just let him talk about the grandkid, because then he lets his guard down and then he likes you more. And then there it is. And I think that's something that really clicked with me, because it doesn't always have to be about business. A lot of it is just relating to the person and what they're going through.
Yeah, I love that, Andrew. Great tip there. That to me is when we're growing our database, one of the things we're putting in as we talk to our potential future clients are all of that information, all of those little tidbits we can find out about them. The more we know about them, the more we can learn about their life and get a little bit of their life perspective, the better our conversion is going to be when it really matters. And that's a great example, Andrew. And I hope you guys think about that when you're prospecting and talking to people too. I have a seller lead who's actually, she couldn't list in April. She can only list in either March or May. We're going to do May. And she said, we've got like a surgery event for our family. And I like didn't ask, but I asked enough questions where they volunteered it. And the mom is actually giving her kidney to her daughter. So it's a May follow-up, but that's as Ron preaches, which is tremendous. That's a drop a card. Make sure you drop a card in the mail. Hope you guys are doing well. Been thinking about you, been praying for you, whatever. That surgery went well. If you guys need anything, taking that personal effect makes your database so much more powerful. When you can call somebody, there's people you will find in your database that you haven't talked to for 3 months, and you can call them, and you've only met them at one open house and they haven't called you to see a property yet, but you can call them every quarter and you actually know something about them, and that translates into future business, which is really, really cool. So awesome. Moving on. I guess we can't, I don't know if we're doing these affirmation messages, but today, we're beginning our lead generation by saying an affirmation message out loud. I tune into the needs of those I'm calling and find solutions that work, which plays very nicely onto what you said, Andrew. So that's our affirmation for the day. I'm not going to make you guys say it on virtual Zoom. I'm not that affirmation guy, but that's okay. All right, so in your mission, you developed a list of contacts. We're going to use scripts for METs, people you've met for Power Session 2 and 3. Our goal for 20 minutes is to call those METs and make contact with as many people as possible. This is to be done right now, or this is our classroom activity. Always ask for referrals from each contact. Offer your app, offer your website, whatever you're using to track people. Obviously, we've got our command tools that we can use at our disposal. So goal number 1, we're calling for 20 minutes. Goal number 2, ask for referrals from everybody you talk to. And goal number 3, secure an appointment. So that is our 20-minute activity. It's 12:50. That'll be 1:10 when we're done. So you guys can, I would love it if, I know you guys are going to call, you can put yourselves on mute, or you can leave it open just so we can kind of hear that's, what Eric does at the productivity coaching with the calls. They'll have their power hour and, call all on Zoom. I think that's really cool. If you guys have the ability to turn your cameras on, energy feeds energy. So if you're visually on here and you can turn your camera on, even if your baby is screaming in the background, or even if you're running around or you're eating. That's all good. Love to see your faces while we're doing this activity. We have 20 minutes. I'll bring you back at 1:10. Well, I won't bring you back, but we'll regroup at 1:10. So, all right, make your calls. I'm going to do the same because you got to practice what you preach. I have some calls to make. I have a lot of Mets and I want to make some appointments. So I will see you guys at 1:10. All righty. I see some good looking calls. Pedro's out. He's got a lead. It's a hot lead. Shaking her head in confidence. I like it, Pedro. Let's go.
Yeah, so we went to see a home last week, and it was a for sale by owner. And a guy liked us. The only reason he said he had so many calls, on from the time that he put on Zillow, whatever, he got tired and just didn't want to hear anymore. But he said, I really liked you. You sounded really nice on the phone. And so anyway, we went and saw him. The house needs a lot of work or whatever, but I wanted to follow up with him today. And it turns out, as we're looking in the system, that he put up another home for sale by owner. So I just made an appointment to go see that home as well, and try to come from a place of contribution and just continuously just following up. And I know it can take some time. Doesn't happen, right now, but especially with FSBOs, it might take 3 to 6 or 7 weeks, who knows, but
Yep.
It's a follow-up game, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's not just following up regularly, it's following up often. And we know that FSBOs especially are going to list with an agent much earlier than we'd like to think. So when they tell us to call them next week, yeah, let's get, I'll you can come by give me a call next week. It's like next week is a little too far out because somebody else is going to swoop in and serenade you. In the meantime, we gotta make this move. So
Yeah.
nice. Everybody else finishing up their calls. Anybody else have some specific success, or anybody get cursed out? Hopefully not. These are Mets. These people should like you. We hope they like you.
No one's cursed me out before, but they've been very blunt and forthcoming.
Oh, your Mets? No.
Not my Mets. I'm just cold calling.
It's funny. I think a lot of people get scared of calling your Mets because when you're calling people that you know or you've met before, you don't want to feel salesy, So we tell ourselves these things of like, oh, I can't call my best friend and ask him for business because I don't want to seem like I'm just trying to get something out of him. But in reality, your friends, your family are the people you should be going to with needs.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scripts right now for people this works for people and people you don't know. It's a very good farm script, but one of my favorite scripts is just like, we're not talking about I'm not asking them specifically for business, but look, I've got this works in Face and Lakes in Kinnelon, where I have like 5 buyers there's literally not a single house for sale. I'll literally just call everybody I know in the neighborhood and be like, do you know anybody, like a neighbor, a friend, your babysitter? Do you know anybody that's selling? Because I have these buyers, they have to find a house and there's just not any options. I just need help. Can you help me? And like that help ask it motivates people differently, because I'm not asking you, you don't have to buy Girl Scout cookies from me, but I'm asking you to help me find somebody, help me make a match here. And that's a really powerful, always for us, it's always been a really powerful Met tool. So hopefully
I use that help thing, even just calling FSBOs or expireds. I'm not sure if you can help me. I always say, hi, my name is Pedro. I'm not sure if I'm looking for the homeowner of XYZ street or whatever. And I wonder if you could help, that help thing is pretty useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll hear me a lot of times today. You'll hear me use the word disarm, and I think that's something that we want to do in cold calling. That's something we want to do when we're negotiating, the main topic of today. But the idea of disarming the person on the other side is a huge benefit to us getting to the finish line, because a lot of times when we call people that are not expecting our call, their guard is up, or we're calling an agent after we saw the inspection report come in and we're calling the other agent and everybody's guard's up. We want to disarm them as much as we can, because we're not trying to. Real estate is not conflict. It happens every once in a while. I certainly have had my share of conflict moments, some of which I'm not uber proud of, but it never gets you anywhere. When we step back and realize any conflict that we have in this industry is not usually beneficial. We get a lot farther with sweetness than we do with angry. Cool. Christina, you want to share slides now? Going to get your head in the game.
Yep.
Get your head in the game.
Okay.
All right, sweet. What do you guys normally like? I've seen other things where people have you guys read these. Is that kind of been the case? Caitlin's shaking her head, maybe.
It depends on who, if you, that's what you want. Some people didn't want to talk the whole time, so they asked for volunteers to read. It's up to you.
Yeah, I don't really. I'll just talk. Nobody wants to be called out. All right. I'm going to read through this. There's a funnel portion of it, a funnel graphic down here that I love. I know you guys have been seeing on some of the material. We'll keep going to that, but I'll go through this. Negotiations are an integral part of most real estate transactions. In fact, they are so important that a 2014 NAR survey of buyers and sellers, negotiations ranked second in the list of what buyers want most from their agent, and ranked sixth, that's actually kind of crazy, in what sellers want from their agent. As with the offer process, negotiation is a pivotal point. It can literally be the deal maker or deal breaker. Negotiations can actually happen twice during this contract process. The first time during the offer phase with the goal of getting a contract, and second during the option or under contract period, while with the goal of closing the contract. After investing so much time and energy to move a lead all the way to an agreement and then to a sales contract, do not let a deal fall through now. Your ability to negotiate will directly influence your rate of contracts that close. So it's actually cool that we're talking about this right around the 1 year anniversary of COVID hitting, because our shift topic last year at this time was bulletproofing your transactions, and negotiation is how you bulletproof these transactions. A year ago, when the world was shutting down, we were all trying to cling on to our contracts. And while I was not in business in 2007, 2008, 2009, I listened to a lot of stories where people just watched their entire under contract and pipeline vanish overnight. And people were thinking that when COVID hit. Obviously, we saw 2020 unfold in a very different way than we thought COVID was going to affect. But at the beginning of that, I remember talking to an agent on the other side of a transaction that I had in Wayne, and the agent was like literally in tears that he had 5 million of pendings cancel on him. And obviously I saw his numbers at the end of the year and he did okay. And by okay, I mean very good. So it worked out, but it is a scary time. Bulletproofing your contracts and negotiating to influence your rate of contracts that close is really, really critical. We're at the bottom of the funnel. We're about to hit payday. So negotiating these contract periods are how you're going to keep your contracts together. Wouldn't it be great if everything that you put pending closed, or actually so predictably, maybe it wasn't everything, because there's always that house with a leaky underground oil tank the seller refuses to remove, or maybe a plane crashed in the backyard and contaminated the soil. I don't know who would have bought a property like that. But when you're getting to this point, it'd be great if we had some sort of predictive measure for what your contract to close is. If your negotiation is solid to this point, you can actually figure out, okay, 95% of my pendings close. That gives us a really good idea of how to run our economic model for our business. So Christina, you can scroll down. Make it happen, negotiation. You may not realize it, but you are almost always negotiating. When there is something that you want, that new car for the price you want to pay, for your friends to see your point of view in an argument, or for your child to do the dishes, that would be hard for my 4-month-old. The truth is that whatever you want is often owned or controlled by someone else. The way to get what you want is through negotiation. Negotiation is bargaining, give and take process between two or more parties, each with its own aims, needs, and viewpoints, seeking to discover a common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or to resolve a conflict. So here's our nice little infographic. In real estate, negotiations occur between agents and between agents and their clients, which is really interesting because I think most people are not acutely aware that during the contract, we're actually negotiating with our own clients too. I think we either assume that they're going to go along with the flow and that they should listen to us out of default because this is our job, or whatever. I don't know, but we are negotiating with our clients through that period. And if you guys have ever had a client who just did not trust you through the whole process, you know how much negotiation has to go into it to make sure that this client stays aligned with you. A lot of that negotiation can be done up front, and we want it to, so we're not in the contract period and finding out that they're absolutely crazy and we didn't see it. But we are negotiating at all times. So Christina, you want to pull up Josh Anderson's negotiating video?
And then let me know if you guys can hear this.
Hi, I'm Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee. I've
Can't
been
see it, but we can hear it. Yeah.
2006. 2014, we did about 200 transactions for about $60 million in volume. I grew up on a farm, so I've always.
Yeah, we can't see it. We can just hear it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let's do that again. Hold on.
You're negotiating with the computer.
Yeah, I really am. It's my job. Okay, let's do this. Okay.
There we go.
Oh,
Horses, being the youngest of four, and I'm trading.
okay, let's try this over.
Hi, I'm Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been with Keller Williams since 2006. 2014, we did about 200 transactions for about $60 million in volume. I grew up on a farm, so I've always seen my dad negotiating land and cows and horses, being the youngest of four, and I'm trading and negotiating with my brothers all growing up. So I've kind of done it all the time. Some people are certainly gravitate toward it and are naturally better at it than others. But I think that negotiation can definitely be learned. I think there's a lot of skills that go into being a great negotiator. I think it's learning your client. Instead of kind of assuming that you know what's important to them, really asking a lot of questions and letting them tell you what they need or want, and then speaking to the other agent and finding out what's most important to their client. And there's some agents that just don't give any. When I have an agent that I'm dealing with that's very tight-lipped, I just keep asking questions, and they give me information that they might not have otherwise given, whether it's a divorce or a death, or it's just they got relocated to some other city. And I think if you're really listening and being intentional and purposeful about listening, you'll find out exactly what's important to them or what they have to have. In certain situations, you have to be creative. We're always looking for that next little tip to help our clients out and win the deals. One of the techniques that we've used a lot that's worked well for us is the escalation clause. For example, if the property is listed at $250,000 We might go in at $250,000 with strong terms, and in special stipulations, we might put in there that we're willing to beat the next best documented offer by $1,000 up to $263,000. And the best offer might be $261,000, so we end up getting it for $262,000. From a client standpoint, be willing to have a real conversation with your clients. It's not us just being realtors for them. It's us consulting and advising and really telling them, if you really want this property, here's what you have to do to get it. Everybody's got a different way of how they would negotiate. And networking with other Keller Williams agents around the country, the more you hear it, the more ideas you get. And then you end up gearing it towards you and what you think is going to work best for you and your clients. A lot of it comes down to experience, and I think the more deals you do, the more comfortable you get with it. If you can step back from every transaction and learn something, you're going to get really good over time.
Sweet. Any ahas from that? What are your takeaways? You knew I was going to ask this question, so.
I think you mentioned it also, but he mentioned it that he grew up on a farm and he learned, from his father about negotiation, negotiating, farmland or feed or whatever animals. And a lot of people don't realize, they've been negotiating their whole life for something or the other. If Mary and I just met, which was over 30 years ago, we'd be negotiating a date, something like that. But I think a lot of people are afraid to ask about certain things. And I've always learned that if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So when it comes to negotiating, it's like haggling almost, in a sense. In some cultures, it's prolific. It's like part of their culture. In other cultures, the price is this. Don't ask for lower. Don't ask for higher. So I think that was my aha.
That's a great one. And the culture thing is actually it's a really important one to bring up in North Jersey. It's such a melting pot here. We have so many people from so many different walks of life, so many different areas. And you're right. There's one of the negotiations I find myself doing with buyers all the time. There are lots, there's no, it's not like a centralized thing. There are a lot of cultures that by default feel like they must negotiate. They cannot possibly pay list price. They must negotiate. And for a buyer in a seller's market like we have right now, they need to understand that is not the way that homes are priced currently. And there's a supply and demand issue that might take that, what you believe deeply about negotiating and the way they price, the way homes are priced. Some people automatically think, all right, I'm going to try to get 10% off this price. It's like, well, when they're going 10% over, you might be getting a deal if you just get at list. So understanding those, Pedro, as you said, that's a really, really, really good point. Really good point. Any other ahas from the video? Anything else you saw that stuck out to you?
Have you ever seen that tactic that he mentioned about bidding $250 and then offering $1,000 over? I didn't even think that would be an option.
Yeah, so that is a highly contended. I'm actually really surprised. I almost texted Ron before this class to find out if he wanted me to totally eliminate that part. But the escalation clause is a relatively contested practice. It's not illegal. It's not against the terms of. It's not unethical. It's not against the terms of what we have. But there are people. Weichert loves their escalation clauses. So if you have a listing and you get a couple Weichert agents, you'll see them a lot. Fred could probably talk to it because he's been in the business probably longer than I've been alive. Sorry, Fred. But I know that there is perfect, and Kieran's entering the room. This is a perfect time. Fred, why don't you opine before I finish this thought?
Okay, so thanks for throwing dirt on me. You know, I'm not dead yet, Kurt.
That's okay.
I think Weichert back in the day was the first one that started using this escalation clause. There's a lot of issues with it. You know, look, it could work very well for the person submitting the offer with the escalation clause. But it could lead to problems down the road. You know, just like anything, people will overbid on something and then all of a sudden have that aha moment was, hey, did I really do the right thing? And now with these escalation clauses where they're saying $1,000 over the asking price, or $5,000 or $10,000 over the highest offer up to a certain amount. I know there are agents that talk to their sellers ahead of time and just say, look, you know, you're probably going to get these escalation clauses. You need to see them because we can't hold them back from you. But you're probably going to want to just throw out these escalation clauses on everyone that comes in and just negotiate each one or a highest and best and end it at that. You know, have I used it myself? Yes, I have. Did I win the bid on it? No, it didn't help me because the seller didn't think it was fair to come out with something like that. The seller took it as well, if that was your price, why didn't you just give it to me in the beginning? So the seller can actually look at that as not right. You're trying to pull a fast one on them. So do I approve of them? No, I don't. I don't approve of them. And I won't use them anymore, although I know people still do.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Fred. I was brought up in real estate under the Ron Iosa school of thought. So if you've ever heard Ron share his opinion on escalation clauses, his is very much in line with yours, Fred. I think it creates a perception issue to the seller. It can legally contracts are supposed to have a price on them. And when you submit an escalation clause, you're basically submitting a contract without a price. There's obviously parameters, so it's a gray area, but it's there's a lot of gray area. There's a little too much gray area for most people to feel very comfortable with it. So, you know, this is the type of market where people really try to lean on escalation clauses because you want so hard for your buyer to win. But it may end up, as Fred said, it may end up hurting you more in the end. So thanks for sharing, Fred. That was very, very helpful. I've never used one. I've always, you know, for you guys, when you list houses, if you don't want to take those, whenever you call for a highest and best, we always outline, you make sure the seller's in the driver's seat. So you're not doing anything without the seller knowing, but you always want to outline that to your seller that, look, these are, you know, once we decide we're not accepting escalation clauses, every agent that's submitting, we're saying we're not accepting escalation clauses.
I would get that in writing from even an email from the seller.
Yep.
So that you have proof that they're the ones that initiated it.
Correct. Awesome. Cool. Mike, good question. Good pickup on that. Any other ahas there before we move on to the next part? All righty. Christina, you want to pull us back to our handy dandy outline?
We left off here, right?
We sure did.
Oh.
Nice. All right, negotiating tips. Keep the following tips in mind as you work toward mastery in negotiation. Above all else, be professional. Remember your goal, a signed contract. This is what you're driving towards and it's what both agents and their clients have in mind. Control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. If you create anxiety in your client or other parties, you are reducing their leverage in negotiations. Everything that comes out of your mouth, control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. I feel like that was necessary to read again. Everything that you say matters. Next one, continually refer back to motivation. Remind your client why they want to buy or sell and help them reevaluate their request if they are becoming unreasonable. Refer back to motivation is so important because when people are buying or selling, ultimately the motivation is what drives them. And in a market like right now, if you're working with buyers, their motivation has to be either price or house. If you want to win, if you have to get a house, we can't also be concerned about a price. The motivation has to speak. If they're trying to get a deal, if they're trying to get a good price, but they're willing to wait, that's good motivation. The motivation is a deal, and that's okay. We can work with that, but we also have to have the expectations that are in line with that. So no matter what you're doing, continually refer back to motivation. You're working with sellers, a little bit easier right now, but even in times when it's difficult, refer back to the motivation. They're selling for a reason. Are they going to Florida? If they're going someplace warmer, we're going to constantly refer back to that motivation. We're going to make them think about the reason they're putting their house in the market in the first place. Motivation comes, that needs to be, it's something that people lose sight of easily, but it needs to be something we remind them about regularly. Next point, don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk. Keep your client's motivation close to your chest. My wife always says, he or she who talks first loses. And I love that. I love that phrase. It's always been one that sticks with me because people have a tendency to talk way too much about their clients. As agents on one side, we want to exploit agents that will give up the farm, but we don't want to do that. Keep your client's motivation close to your chest. If you have if you're representing a seller and there's some sort of adverse scenario, divorce or, death, estate, sickness, we don't want to be sharing that information because that now is leverage for the buyer in order for them to make an offer with knowing that your sellers have a scenario where they really, really need to sell. Next one, don't be attached to the outcome. You'll do hundreds or thousands of transactions in your career. There is no way you can get everything you and your clients want all the time. Don't let it affect your mindset if a deal doesn't go through or if your client doesn't act on your recommendation. Find a different win for your client. Cool. Any thoughts, ahas on that first part?
Yeah, Kurt, there's a lot of agents. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's been some agents I've come in contact with that feel that they're the owner of the property and they're going to be the ones either accepting or not accepting that offer, and they become a roadblock in the transaction rather than opening the gate and getting it done. So it's important that as an agent, we don't own the property and we need to work through the owner or the buyer with what needs to be done, not demanding it because we feel it needs to be done.
Yeah, great point. Great point. All right, common points of negotiation. During the negotiation process, Price and terms are common points of negotiation. Price. While the sales price is the primary factor in negotiations, it is not necessarily the bottom line. In a situation where a seller receives multiple offers at the same price, it is the terms of those offers, in addition to the buyer's financial position, that will determine which one wins. Terms. The terms of an offer may be financial or time-based or both. When the buyer and seller can't agree on a sales price, the following 5 offer terms come into play. Closing costs. Traditionally paid by the buyer, closing costs are in addition to the purchase price. Securing the cash to pay these expenses can be difficult for some, especially for first-time home buyers. Therefore, the seller may be asked to pay a portion of them during the closing costs. When you represent a seller, make your client aware that it's common for buyers to ask for part of the closing costs to be covered by them and what their options are. Obviously, not happening a lot right now. Closing date. When the seller has a very specific time frame for moving, the buyer has the upper hand and can leverage this by being more flexible with the closing date and less flexible with the offer price. Conveyances. That's personal property, furniture, window treatments. I'm going to summarize these. Earnest money and option fee. It's in the seller's best interest for the buyer to put as much into escrow as possible as soon as possible. While locality's Board of Realtors has a standard practice for when earnest money and option fee is deposited, the amount is often negotiated. So that's in your contracts, that's your initial and additional deposit. Repairs, probably one of the biggest ones on here. Most offers are contingent on the outcome of the home inspection and necessary repairs. Depending on the complexity of the repairs, buyers may ask the seller to make the repairs prior to closing, deduct the repair costs from the purchase price, or pay a lump sum at closing to cover the costs. Sweet. Moving on, 3 Ps approach. Negotiation is a skill that can be learned and perfected with experience. The best practice for negotiating and bringing the buyer and seller together is the 3 Ps approach. Prepare, present, and position. So we'll go over this first P, prepare. Preparation is the key to building confidence and ensuring a smooth negotiation process. Know your goal. Have a clear goal of reaching a win-win agreement in which both the buyer and seller are satisfied with the outcome of the negotiation. Remind your client of their motivation for moving or buying the house, and that when the contract closes, they'll be able to move on with their lives. Know your client. Make sure you fully understand your client's goals, learn the areas in which they are willing to negotiate and where they will stand firm. Think ahead, anticipate what the other party wants out of the negotiation, write down how you think they may counter the offer and how you plan to handle it. Set clear expectations. Prior to meeting with the other party, set clear and realistic expectations with your client, and then under-promise and over-deliver. Stress the importance of moving quickly to create a sense of urgency. Part of setting clear expectations with your client is being clear that win-lose agreements are likely to be rejected by the other side. To set yourself up for success, make it a win-win. Be informed. Before making an offer or counteroffer, it's good practice to speak with 2 other agents. Ask open-ended questions and use active listening to find out as much as you can about the other party and their agent. This helps you know with whom you are negotiating and on what points you will negotiate and where you and your clients have leverage. Obey the laws. Every state and locality has its own set of laws that regulate zoning, mortgage qualification, other real estate matters. Stay current on your local regulations and stay out of court. Good idea. Know the documents inside and out. Become familiar with your local Board of Realtors governing forms. Take the time needed to understand the form and templates to what belong in each field. So, all right, so we got some compliance stuff on there. Christina, actually, could you scroll back up a little bit? I want to kind of take a look at that. At the beginning of prepare here, know your goal, know your client, think ahead, set clear expectations. There's a lot of things on here, but really the biggest thing that I want you guys to think about is really the idea of it being win-win. Because ultimately, if we can convey to the seller or to the buyer the idea that the terms are win-win, you're going to get to a point of acceptance much faster. especially if you're working with buyers and you're trying to get a bunch off the price, or you're trying to get a lot of stuff down. Working to a win-win agreement that makes sense for them really, really matters. So, all right, we can keep scrolling. Your turn. Sweet. Participation. Prepare to negotiate. We're going to read the scenario below. We're going to identify key areas where in which you need more information or certainty before you could confidently negotiate on your client's behalf. Write 3 specific questions you would ask your client in the space provided below. Obviously, we're not dealing with hard copies, but you guys can scribble it on a notepad or a receipt or post-it note you have lying around. Here's the scenario. You are representing a single buyer. Your client is renting her present property. Like any first-time buyer, she is looking to you to guide her through the process. The asking price for the home she really loves is $175K, and the house appears to have evidence of a roof leak. It is listed as is and is correctly priced. Your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible since she still has a number of student loans to pay off. She wants to write an offer for $155. There has been quite a bit of activity on this listing. So questions to ask your client. Christina, you can scroll up just so we could reread that scenario again. All right, so what do you guys think? What do we need to know from our client here?
I guess one of the things you'd want to know, for, like it says in there, she really loves it. How much does she really love it? Is she willing to put an offer in for 155 and lose it? Especially if there's a lot of activity on the listing, because that's potentially what could happen.
When does her lease end?
That's a great question too. All the above. Nice one, Caitlin. Nice one, Fred. Any other thoughts? What else would we want to know from them? There's a roof leak. I mean, what do we want to? How does that affect what we need to know from our buyer?
You'd want to know if 175 is out of her price range?
That's a great point, Mike.
She pre-approved?
Is she offering 155 because she can't afford 175? That's a great point. And we see a roof leak here. They're selling the house as is. They're likely not going to negotiate off that. Does she have the cash to handle that repair? That's a good question. That's a great question. Let's see some other ones KW gave me. What is it about this house that makes it your favorite? How much do you like it? What is the possibility of you paying for the repair and we state your asking price of 155? What happens? This is a great one. What happens if the seller counters with a full ask and they're not going to do the repair? Are you still willing to buy it? See, one of the things when we go back to when we look at our previous things about not talking too much, those questions like that are an opportunity where we're gonna stop. We're gonna say, you know, if the seller counters at 175 and they're not gonna make any repairs, do you still want it? Because what happens is a lot of agents or a lot of people who are not necessarily great at negotiating will talk too much. And I think many of us have been there. I certainly have, where you ask, you know, do you like it at 175, even if they're not going to do repairs? I mean, I think it's a good price. You know, the roof issue is not a big deal. It's like, it's not really my prerogative whether the roof issue is a big deal. And it's not really my prerogative whether I think it's a good price unless she asks me. Right? Any other thoughts on that one? Cool. Ahas from this scenario. Anything you heard that you hadn't thought of before? Anything that made you think about a scenario you dealt with?
Not injecting your own opinion. I mean, that was what you said, but it's, that resonates with me.
For sure. And that's hard. We're experts. We get paid for our opinion in a lot of ways, but when it matters to a buyer, it may not matter. Have you guys ever had a client who purchased a house that you never would have purchased? It happens. Sometimes there's this inexplicable love for the house that they can't justify as it pertains to a dollar amount. All right, Christina, let's keep moving. 2, that's the second P, present. Move into the negotiation process by presenting your current offer to the cooperating agent and listen to the response. Call the other agent to let them know the offer or counteroffer is coming. I don't like the rest of this part. Invite them into the buying loop. We're not worrying about that. Call the other agent to let them know that the offer is coming, or to let them know that the offer has already arrived. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. While it's not always possible or practical to make your presentation in person, a face-to-face meeting allows you to analyze the body language and facial expressions. Otherwise, present your offer by phone and listen for verbal cues. Keep quiet once you present an offer. Sometimes letting the other person do most of the talking is the most powerful negotiation technique because of what they will reveal. Listen carefully to what is important to the other party. Write down what they say to demonstrate that you are taking them seriously, and then move on. Stay calm and relaxed. Either party may have a strong emotional reaction to the price or other terms of the offer. Be a calming influence until they are able to see the situation rationally again. Remember, you are there as a representative for your client. Keep your emotions out of it. Focus on the customer's needs, isolate the objections of both sides, and offer solutions that will satisfy the other party while still meeting your client's core needs. Give your offer the best chance. Be confident and committed to your offer as you present it. Avoid indicating to the other side if you believe it is a less than great offer for them. God, I love that last one. You don't want to be the agent. I know it's a low ball, but you think we could get a counter on it? Like, just let the seller respond. I love that last one. Any ones out of those, Christina, can you scroll up in a way that we could see most or all of these? Oh yeah, zoom out. All right, cool. Any of these stand out to you? Things that where you've run into problems, or maybe ones that have been successful for you before? One for me, listen carefully to what is important to the other party. That is one of the most important things that I've found in negotiation, is find out what's important to the other side and how do we make that valuable? How do we make our contract terms? How do we make our offer valuable in that way to the other side? You know, do we know that the seller just wants, you know, if we know that the sale is in a state, and we know that the you know, administrators of the estate, you know, 2 kids that live across the country, and they really don't want it. They want just the easiest possible transaction. That can actually make a really good scenario for our buyers if we're submitting maybe an advantageous price, but an as-is deal where we know that we're not going to ask the sellers for a penny. There's a lot of opportunity in there. Any other of those stick out to you guys? I'm gonna have like the Jeopardy theme song on speed dial. I have a guitar here. I guess I could play that. Cool. All right, let's move on. Keep going. Your turn. Nonverbal cues. In the time allotted, which we have, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes. That seems like a lot. I don't think we need 10 minutes for that. I'll go 5, 6, something like that. Write down as many nonverbal cues, body language, tone of voice, rate of speech as possible that suggests the negotiation is going in a positive or negative direction. So we have 10 minutes. It's 1:55 now. I'll probably stop you sometime between 2:02 and 2:05. Nonverbal cues. We got less than 10 minutes to go over. Face-to-face and on the phone, positive and negative nonverbal cues. See you at 2:02, 2:05, maybe. I had to, sorry. It's the key change, gets me every time. People are just leaving the class, sorry. All right, I think we can come back from this. 10 minutes seems excessively long to come up with this. Do you guys agree? All right, cool. And we can kind of roll with it on the fly. So some nonverbal cues that would indicate positive and negatives face-to-face and on the phone. Face-to-face, I think we're not going to see the agents that way unless we're at inspection or appraisal. On the phone, we certainly will. But any of these nonverbal cues that come across, what do you guys think? Any big ones there that stick out to you? Let's go with face-to-face positive. What do you guys have there?
Smiling, tilting the head, nodding agreeingly.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm doing now. Very good.
I can't.
Anything face-to-face positives?
Eye contact.
Yeah.
Eye contact, great one. Great one. Eye contact is it's like a lost skill. Gosh. Started with my generation. Sorry, guys. Open gestures. Sitting
Meaning-
back.
Mhm.
You know, if you sit back, well, maybe not arms crossed, but
Hey, Kurt, real quick. There was a top producing agent. You talked about eye contact. And one of the things that she used to teach her team members to do was when they started a conversation with a new client, to look them in the eyes and remember what color eyes they had. This was direct eye contact with them. So it just reinforced that making eye contact.
that's a great point. I like that, Fred. I like that. Remember what color eyes they have. And remember their name. Don't forget their name. That would be me. All right, face-to-face negatives. Kind of nonverbal negative cues.
Crossing your arms or putting your hands in the pockets or behind them, kind of like they're hiding something or they're on their guard.
Mhm.
Lip biting,
Yeah. A little nervous thing.
Head down. Line in the eyebrow. Fidgeting a
Being-
lot.
Being like fidgety.
Mhm.
You guys are just describing my resting state right now.
Oh, no.
It's funny, some of these negatives too, you look at fidgeting, you look at hands in pockets, not making eye contact, might indicate I don't want to say weakness, but might indicate a little bit of uncertainty. And as negotiators, there's an opportunity. If we see somebody's not comfortable, it might be helpful for us to try to make them comfortable, try to do things in a way, adjust our tone. If we're not cueing into those things, it might be in our best interest to create that win-win scenario or create that win-win feeling. I mean, sometimes making the agent on the other side feel great talking to you also makes them now work for you when it comes to negotiating with their client. Any other thoughts there? Cool. How about on the phone positive? I mean, you're only getting it from voice. So what kind of voice characteristics are we listening for?
Laughing, giggling.
Yeah, those are real positives. Laughing. You get somebody to laugh. That's awesome. You got them. You guys ever do that in a call when you're talking to another agent? I love that. That's like having a relationship with the agent on the other side of the transaction is like my favorite thing ever, because you get to a point where you can have them do things for you just because they like you. It sounds really manipulative the way I'm describing it. And it is, because I want my offer accepted. You know, if you get the other agent laughing, oh my gosh, you don't believe these clients today. I need tequila faster. And they're like, oh my gosh, I know. Accept my offer. Thanks. Without negatives on the phone, anything you guys, negative nonverbal cues, aside from the overtly yelling, screaming,
Sighing.
sighing.
When they keep clearing their throat.
Yep.
Hesitation,
No.
pausing.
Hesitation. I like that.
Straight up hanging up on you.
No.
That's definitely a negative. They hung up. You missed the negative cues leading up to the click.
That's right.
Cool. All right, Christina, let's keep rolling. Nice ones, guys. All right. Negotiating, your clients and or agents may use iPhone entered the room. Sorry, I'm very easily distracted. That's why I'm a drummer. In negotiation, your clients and or agents may use certain methods or tactics in an attempt to manipulate the negotiation. Because these tactics are generally predictable, you can learn to quickly and accurately identify them when they are being used on you. Additionally, you can respond with the appropriate counter tactic with a high probability of accurately predicting how your response will be taken. Following are 3 of the most common tactics used in negotiation and counter tactics to use in response. All right. I love the names of these. Tactic number 1, nibbling. Once your client has agreed upon one major concession, the other party will start nibbling for additional smaller concessions. What's a good counter? What do you guys think for a counter tactic on that one? Nibbling for additional smaller concessions. I feel like I see this all the time with the attorney review. So one thing, if we're in inspection negotiations, nibbling, we can actually literally do it in return. Ask for a concession before we agree to another concession on theirs. Interesting tactic. I'll nibble you right back. I hate that word. Maria, you're muted, unless you're not talking to me. All good. All right, hot potato. I see this one all the time. This is like this one and the next one are extremely common. The other party tries to pass a problem onto you. For example, the cooperating agent tries to pass all closing costs to your client because their client can't afford them. That would be an issue. It's funny because a lot of these get written by KWRI, and like the closing cost thing in New Jersey, because of tax escrow, is so high. Everybody's used to dealing with it. They know up front whether they're going to pass closing costs along. But the hot potato issue is you'll see all the time. I've seen septics become a hot potato issue. Well, the seller doesn't have any more money, so the buyer's going to have to come up with it if they want the house, because the seller just can't afford it. We just won't sell the house. What would a counter tactic be? What do you guys think? They dumped a hot potato in your lap. Easiest thing to do, hot potato issue, throw it back and test the validity of that. So if somebody drops something like that, a septic issue, or I don't know, that's probably the easiest one, but a septic issue, maybe a well's not drilled deep enough, they're not getting enough water, well pump's shot. They try to throw those issues. First thing we want to do, throw it right back on the other party, because we want to test the validity of that. We want to test to see whether that's an actual issue or not. If it is, we could talk about it, but it's your problem. We're not taking it. Good guy, bad guy. Good cop, bad cop. 2 people working together, example, spouses, will take on opposing roles. One appears friendly and considerate, that's my wife, while the other behaves in a difficult or aggressive manner, that's me. Think of the typical salesperson, good guy, who says his manager, bad guy, won't let him reduce the price any further. You guys have to have some good ones on good cop, bad cop. What's your counter tactics? What do you guys think best way to counter a good cop, bad cop? I like the car salesperson analogy. What do you tell that salesperson who is trying to be the good guy and blame everything on the manager?
Bring out the manager. Let me have a conversation with him.
What if you can't talk to the other person? What if the agent on the other side is good cop? I don't know why I'm saying cop. That's a habit. Good guy. And the agent is making the client bad guy. Oh, my client, they're crazy. They're not gonna agree to this. You guys seen that? I see that all the time. See that all the time. Listing agents. Look, my seller's not going to do anything. They're nuts. I barely got him to sign a listing agreement. Are we going to close or what? Put the problem back. Ask him. Well, this is what we're asking for. Or you lump the good guy as a bad person. You make them feel like the same thing. Call them on the game, attach the good guy to the bad guy, associate them as, if the agent on the other side is blaming the client, you can't control him. You can't reason with him. You know better. You're a professional. Cool. Moving on. Next P, position. Last P. Positioning is moving both parties closer to each other until you have a full agreement. Acknowledge and affirm the common ground where the buyer and seller are in agreement and are at the same position. Then identify which positions may be easily adjusted and which are set in stone. Common ground is the key to our agreements here. Ask what and how questions to better understand the other party's values and why certain things are important to them. For example, say you represent a seller who wants to close in 30 days. If a buyer wants to close within 60 days, ask your client, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, why are you requesting a 30-day closing? Why is that important? What is important about closing in 30 days? If your client becomes defensive, you would explain, my goal is to let the buyers know why this point is important to you. So we're not letting them cascade their defensiveness on us. We're just trying to do our job better. We're trying to let them know why this is important to you. Understanding what's important to the other party allows you to prioritize and address their issues in order of importance. Positioning is a process and sometimes requires you to come back to the negotiating table more than once. Sometimes several counteroffers will be necessary to negotiate an acceptance. Know when to walk away. Sometimes the other side may refuse to give your client the win they desperately need despite your efforts. Knowing when and how to walk away can not only save your client from a win-lose deal, but it can sometimes jolt an unreasonable party into a concession for fear of losing the deal. The key is to walk away without burning bridges. It's interesting. Walking away sometimes it is the last threat, but you want to do so in a way where the other party really wants to save it, or at least will test whether the other party really wants to save it. There was a situation where on my purchase, actually, Meg and I bought a house last year. We were under contract and there was a huge barn on the property. We were negotiating with a bank foreclosure, huge barn on the property. And halfway through the contract, and the barn was important to me because it was like cars on the first floor, a music studio on the second floor. And halfway through the contract period, the bank tore the barn down. And if you were around last year, everybody pretty much heard this story. The bank tore the barn down, basically absolutely changed the deal of the contract. So we asked for a handful of different concessions, and eventually we threatened to walk away, and they said, go ahead, and we did. And then this was in like January, February. They put it back for auction right as COVID hit, and then we won that auction under the reserve price. But now that COVID had basically shut the whole country down, they accepted it even though we hadn't hit reserve, because they said these were the same people. Let's just get rid of this thing. It makes more sense. So sometimes you have to know when to walk away. We wanted at auction like 100K less than the original offer, but you have to know when to walk away to protect yourself, protect your money. And at some points it might go away completely, and that's okay, because if you're walking away, you're doing so because it's an extreme circumstance and you can't possibly take the property under these conditions at this price. And you kind of test what their position is on that. Your turn. Choose a partner. Christina, how possible is this, choosing a partner? I guess we can't do this, right?
I feel like it would work better if like we had breakout rooms set up, but I didn't do that before like the session.
That's all right. All right. Well, you guys can, I don't know how we're going to do this. I'll just read the scenario. We could talk about it. In this scenario, somebody would take the role of the buyer's agent, the other would play the listing agent. We're going to review the scenario and just kind of talk about it, because that's about as good as we can do right now. So here's the scenario. The property has 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, and is listed at $350K in a well-established neighborhood. The house requires new carpeting throughout the first floor and a new garage door opener. 3 offers have been made, but all were below the asking price. Buyer agent role. Your buyers are making an offer of $340 for the house. They have been pre-approved. The buyers would like to close in the shortest time possible since they are moving from out of state and need a home for their family. Since they are leaving their appliances in their current home, the buyers would also like all of the appliances to be included. Listing agent role. Your sellers have raised their family in the house, and you are selling and have many friends and family in the area. Since their children are now grown, they no longer need the amount of space their current home provides and have purchased a home in Florida. They would like to give all appliances to their daughter, who has just gone through a divorce. They will not be moving until they have sold their current house. And although they would like to get to Florida as soon as possible, they are ready to stand their ground regarding the price. All right. Oop. I do that all the time, Christina.
With Max, it like happens all the time.
All the time. It literally happens all the time. Like, no, I was trying to scroll up.
Yeah.
Don't go back.
Okay.
Keep going. Keep going.
I think this is where we were.
All right. So fam, let's take a look at our buyer agent role here. We're making an offer, $340 on the house. Time is important to them. They've been pre-approved. We don't know how much they've been pre-approved for, but we're 10K apart. The buyers would like to close in the shortest amount of time possible since they are moving from out of state and need a home for their family. Since they are leaving their appliances in their current home, the buyers would also like all of the appliances to be included. So what are your thoughts here as a buyer agent in terms of negotiating this? What are our first thoughts? If we haven't read that listing agent role, what are some things that jump out to you?
Appliances.
Yep.
And I was gonna say too, is like, obviously our buyer wants like move in the quickest amount of time. What about the sellers? Like, what do they want? So as a buyer's agent, you'd want to reach out to the listing agent to find out what their sellers want.
Exactly. And Caitlin, if you called me and asked me that, I was a listing agent, and you said, you were doing great negotiations and you're asking about motivation and all that stuff that goes with it. You would be asking me about, what are the seller's timeline? And, what I would likely tell you is the sellers don't need to sell. They're downsizing. They're trying to get their price, and that's that. And they've excluded all the appliances. So I would just defer. Yeah, they're not. I would make it seem to you like their motivation's not there. Your buyers seem really lovely. We'd love to help them out. We're just our prices. That's just where we're at. So then you got to think about, all right, how's that? How am I bringing that to my buyers? Going through my buyers there and figuring out what really is important to them. Are the appliances? Can you go out and buy appliances? If the sellers really stand their ground, could we buy appliances? Maybe, probably. It's not our favorite thing. Fridges are expensive, but could we? Yeah. I mean, I guess. What's more important to them? Is it more important that they have appliances, or is it more important that they close on time? And what about the number? You have three factors that are not in alignment between buyer and seller. So I think these are some things we have to think about. Any other thoughts there on the buy side, how you would handle a situation like that?
I guess I would want to know what's more important. Like you were saying, like, if between the two, the appliances or the 10 grand, which one? Because you're probably going to have to give on one.
Absolutely. It's hard almost to take ourselves out of this current market, because now I'd look at that and be like, you're not getting any. You're going to pay full price. You're going to buy your own appliances, and you're going to close when the seller feels like it.
Yeah.
We almost have to take ourselves out of this. This market is not going to last forever, but we have to kind of look at this in realistic terms. But they all do apply. If you can hustle hard for your buyers in this market, you'll be able to be fine in any market. Cool. Any other thoughts on that? Anything listing side on that jump out to you? Any ways you guys would work on? Imagine I'm the buyer's agent and I've made that offer to you. What are some things you would tell me or work with me on negotiation?
Well, Kurt, like I spoke to you on the phone, they're looking for $350,000, and they're not looking to close very quick. And you brought this offer in, and they want the appliances, and my sellers are taking the appliances. We're a lot of items here. What's the most important thing to your client? And let's work on that, as well as the price. Maybe we can negotiate the price in a shorter term. Let's see if we can put this together.
Sure, that's very helpful, Fred. I mean, what do you think your sellers? What's the most important thing? Are they really trying to get to Florida as quick as possible, or do you think price is really just their number one here?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure it out, because if Fred tells me, look, price is it, and these guys want to get to Florida, if you can give me their price, I'm sure, that's kind of where I'm expecting that to go based on that little conversation. I'm expecting Fred to tell me, look, they could leave the appliances. I mean, they'd love to give it to their daughter, but I'm sure they could leave the appliances if we were able to close quickly, which works for my clients. And the price came up, which works for Fred's clients. I might be able to get that third piece, because I want time and appliances. If I'm not going to be able to get time and appliances and money, I'd love to get 2 of 3.
Exactly.
Right.
So Kurt, if you can get your people up to 350, maybe I could get them to agree on leaving the appliances or shortening up the time span.
Okay, cool. Let me. I'll talk to my clients and see what we can work out.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, that's exactly where we want to get to. And honestly, that was pretty for an advantageous position. Sellers had interest for an advantageous position. We realized that our timeline was actually in alignment. So what the seller wanted, which was a quick close, and what the buyers wanted, which was a quick close, were totally in alignment. Seller's price was so important. And I think if my buyers calculated up that 10 grand, I mean, what are you going to spend on appliances? I mean, you can't, it's going to be $3,500, $4,000 on appliances. So, you know, God forbid they want one of those Samsung refrigerators you could play video games on, but that is what I would consider a win-win deal. Good job, Fred. You have yourself a deal.
Sounds good, Kurt.
I'll have my TC send out the all parties. All right, let's keep scrolling, Christina. Put what you've learned to the test, negotiate a counter. All right, we're gonna let's just read the scenario. I think that last one was helpful. We'll keep going through this. This is another partner activity, but let's see if we can find some good info here. Buyer agent scenario. Your client has found the house they love and it's in the neighborhood they want. It is at the top of their price range and does need some work updating the kitchen and master bathroom. Your client makes an offer on the property and the seller's agent says, I must warn you that we have gotten several offers and your offer is pretty low. So buyer agent scenario, clients love the house in the right neighborhood, location, location, location. It's at the top of their price range and it needs some updates. We make an offer and the listing agent says, just want to let you know, I've got several offers and your offer is not near the top. Listing agent scenario. Your sellers need to move within 45 days due to a job transfer. You feel that you have priced the house competitively. You are aware the house needs updating, but the sellers don't see the need because the house was just fine for them. There have been multiple offers. The other offers are still standing, but the timing may not work for the seller. And the latest offer is lower than the asking price. You let the buyer's agent know, I must warn you, we've gotten several offers and your offer is pretty low. All right, so thoughts here. Let's take buyer agent side first. What do you guys think? How are you approaching this? To me, first negotiating is with our client, right? So what are you guys thinking here?
The buyer potentially be willing to waive inspection or appraisal.
That would make their lives easy. You can also go to the seller's agent, find out what's important to the seller. Is price the most important thing to your sellers? The listing agent would probably say, well, no, they need to close in 45 days. Can your buyer do that? At this price, we can. What do you guys think? What are we talking about with our buyers here? We're talking about contingencies. Pedro, you brought up trying to make our offer, you know, our contingencies a little bit more flexible. The clients love the neighborhood. They love the location. It's at the top of the price range. Could we use the price range to our advantage? The short answer is, yeah, we could definitely use the price range to our advantage. Because if we do our right question asking and find out from the listing agent that these guys need to move now. Look, my buyers love this house. We're going to make this really easy for you. This is at the top of their price range, but we can close however quick you want. We can definitely get that 45-day close done for you. That's a scenario where you're most likely to get this done. Any other thoughts there? Any other thoughts there from the listing side? Obviously, we've got that timeline in the back of our head. We don't want to give that away if we can avoid it. But every day that ticks is important for that seller. One thing I'm interested to see that's not brought up, that hasn't been brought up here. I mean, obviously, if you have a situation like this, you have a couple offers, we're probably going to do highest and best in this market. Obviously, that's not the case for this type of negotiating exercise. But from a listing side, we do want to kind of leverage that time frame. When you have a seller sellers need to move within 45 days, that's fast. So we're going to need to work on it. And even though the sellers, we feel we've priced the house competitively, and we're where the house needs updating. The sellers don't see it. We want to make sure that we're aligning with that time frame there for close. All right, Christina, we can move on from this one. All right, putting it all together. All right, so here's your action plan. This is for next week, right? Attend negotiating training classes at your market center, region or family reunion. Kind of challenging given current state of everything. Practice negotiating tactics and counter tactics with a partner. Practice all scripts with your partner. Prepare for next class. Download pre-work. Continue with your daily 10-4. And then you have your 10-4 there.
Yeah, Bubba.
All right, here's your 10-4. Complete your daily 10-4. Write notes. Yeah, Christina, this is all like take-home stuff, right? Am I missing anything here?
Yeah.
All right, cool. This is all for you guys. Obviously, we're going to be a little bit short today just because we can't do the in-person stuff. That's okay. Any big takeaways for Christina? You can back out. We can just go back to everybody. Any big takeaways from today? Any things you guys learned? Any ahas? Anything you're going to use in your things you heard today that are like, wow, I haven't been doing that and I really want to, or any thoughts like that? What do you guys think? I will call on you. I learned how to do this in college.
One thing for me is you're asking a lot of questions. I'm a big talker, and sometimes I don't know when to shut up and just ask questions and let other people talk. And that's something, a skill that I certainly need to improve on. So that's one of my ahas for today. Learn how to ask questions, learn how to reveal their motivation or any other thing that they may have that they're not mentioning. But learn how to ask a lot more questions so that you get more response, more answers, more leverage.
Yep. And in exactly what you said, know when to shut up. The more you talk, the more leverage you give away. Great point. Bring us home, Fred. What do you got?
I just popped back on. An interesting, not an aha from today, but just hammering home that point about keeping your mouth shut. I went in to look at a new car a bunch of years back, and I had just finished a class in negotiating. And I went in and the guy gave me the price, and I looked at it. I looked at him. I looked back at the price. I sat there. And I said, "Is that the best you can do?" And handed it back to him and kept my mouth shut. So then he goes running back to his manager, comes back, hands it to me, this piece of paper. And I did the same thing. I looked at it, handed it back to him and said, "I think you can do better." Kept my mouth shut. And it's hard because it's awkward. It's awkward. And he said, "Oh, okay, I'll go back and let me see what I can do." And he runs back. He comes back with this price with the manager behind him. Okay. The manager actually followed him back into the room. And he hands me the price. And I looked at it. And I said, "Okay, what else are you going to throw in with this?" Handed it back to him. The manager was like, "Well, what do you want?" And there were some other things, extras and stuff that I wanted on the vehicle. And I basically got what I wanted at a reasonable price because I used that technique. And it's hard. It's very hard to keep your mouth shut and wait for them to do something, but it works.
So true. So true. I love that. I had my best deal of 2020. I had a relocation client. He was moving to New Jersey. Why anybody would relocate to New Jersey is beyond me, but he was relocating to New Jersey from Jacksonville, Florida. And he had a $550 budget. And this is like right after, this is April last year. So the world is weird. It was April and May, our search was, and there's just nothing on the market. You know, it was, you guys know. And there was he was looking for, he's 3 kids, you know, looking at good school systems, identified a handful of towns. It was like Kinnelon and Wyckoff, Franklin Lakes, Oakland, kind of that whole corridor, the Midland Park. Really love that 287, 208 corridor. And Wyckoff, I mean, like putting Wyckoff on the list at 550, I'm like, no, bro, you're not getting anything. So there was a house on Cedar Hill Ave in Wyckoff that was listed for $629. The listing agent had just dropped it to $599. And I called the listing agent and I said, and it was like, things were starting to pick up. There was just nothing on the market. And I was like, I called the agent. I was like, "Hey, just wanted to find out, anything about this house. I could, my guys are interested, but it needed a 5-bedroom, for reference, 5-bedroom colonial on Cedar Hill and Wyckoff, built in 65. Nothing's been done since 1965. So it needs some updates, but 600 flat. They just dropped the price." And I said, "Do you have interest on it?" She's like, "We've got nothing. We got to sell this." I was like, "Do tell." She's like, "Well, it's an estate. There's 9 kids. So none of them are going to get a lot of money. They don't even really care. They just got to get this thing out of here." Okay. Anything else about the house? "Well, there's an underground oil tank that they need to remove." "And they're going to do that?" "Yeah, probably." "Okay. What about the septic?" It's original. I don't know if it's going to need to be replaced, but okay." So we made a $500,000 offer as is, other than the tank comes out and the septic gets replaced if it fails. Septic fails, tank comes out. They accepted our offer, got $100K off a 5-bedroom house in Wyckoff. So just gave up the farm. I mean, she was also offering 2% out, so I guess I kind of stereotyped her as not being that would work very hard for a client. But just talk too much.
Yeah.
Talk too much. I give it up.
Absolutely.
Pedro, you said before, you know, sometimes I have a tendency to talk too much. I relate to that too. And like, I always have to remind myself, like, shut up, shut up, stop talking. Gotta know. Any other ahas from today, guys, before I let you, before the bell rings? So weird. Bell, you get anything? Andrew, any ahas? Saray, you've been plugging
I
away.
think stop talking is gold. Like I'm someone who'll talk and talk. I'll try to not give anything away and just build rapport by just chit chat. But I try to not say anything of any importance. And that's really, I think, the biggest thing I could take away from today. Like just don't talk. Don't, you know, like what you said, Meg said, the first one to talk is the loser.
Mhm.
That was I'm jumping into. I think that was important for me because I hate the like silence. It's like nervous energy for me. That I'm like I want to fill it, but definitely something to take away. Just shut up and listen and like wait for them to respond to. So that was good.
I'm going to start formulating just a list of questions. I'm just going to try to memorize as many questions as possible. And just when, you know, to fill the that void, you know, I'm just going to ask the question and then keep quiet.
Yep. And we, you know, you guys are used to script practicing at this point, but we don't often script practice negotiation. We don't often script practice our buyer's consultation, our listing appointment. Those are as important as any practice you're going to have. Like if you could get the appointment, but if you can't go through all those processes, getting comfortable with those scenarios over and over and over again is really important. So I know a lot of times the tendency is we go through Ignite and classes like this and we work through scenario scripts, but that's it. That's the last time we ever work through a contentious buyer until it's actually real, until it's game time. And we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure we're practicing these scenarios. So when that buyer's agent calls you screaming, or the listing agent calls you and like pissed off about something that you said, or something that your buyer asked for through the attorneys, we also get that really nice leverage layer of having attorneys here. They can be a pain, but it's nice to bad cop them and good cop you. But we don't want that scenario to be the first time we're going through this. You don't want to practice your listing appointment at your listing appointment. You want to hit all these things ahead of time. So for those of you, if you have, you know, Maria and Pedro, you have built-in script partners, and you should use that heavily. Meg and I used to do it a ton. Now we do it with our team. You know, if you guys don't have that, find somebody, connect and Ignite to practice with, you know, and ask other agents for advice on these things as you're going through it too. Cool, guys. We're done a little early today. Have a great rest of your week. Set some appointments, put some things pending, please. Your market center thanks you. And all the goals you guys have set out for yourselves of money you want to make. This is the time to do it.